Jamaica is about to close a major chapter in its economic history. For decades, the country has been tied to the International Monetary Fund, more commonly known as the IMF. From large bailout programs in the 1970s to strict reform agreements in the 2010s, IMF support has been both a lifeline and a burden.
You know, I remember back in 2013 already, the odds were not that it was going to be successful.
Now, in 2025, Jamaica's outstanding balance with the IMF has fallen to a tiny fraction of what it once was. At the end of June 2025, IMF records show Jamaica owed just SDR 21.24 million. That translates to about 28 million US dollars. Compare that to nearly $1 billion US dollars borrowed under earlier programs, and the scale of the progress is clear. This repayment milestone means Jamaica is set to finally pay off the IMF.
The country at the time was in a very, very bad financial condition. Couldn't borrow on the financial markets. The debt levels were astronomically high, and the fiscal position of the country was very negative. Fast forward, circumstances have changed enormously.
The IMF is a global financial institution created after World War II. It has 190 member countries, including Jamaica. Its main purpose is to provide short and medium-term financial support to countries facing balance of payments crises, where a country cannot meet its international payment obligations or needs to stabilize its currency. Unlike development banks, which fund long-term projects such as highways, schools, or hospitals, the IMF provides policy-based loans. These loans come with strict conditions. Countries that borrow must commit to fiscal reforms, structural changes, and tighter financial discipline. For Jamaica, borrowing from the IMF became unavoidable in the early 2010s. The country had one of the highest debt-to-GDP ratios in the world, peaking at around 146% in 2013. That meant Jamaica owed nearly 1.5 times the value of all the goods and services produced in its economy each year. With high interest payments consuming the budget, little money was left for development. Investors lost confidence, and economic growth stalled.
To reduce the debt and restore growth in the economy with job creation. It is in that context that some of the unavoidable hard decisions had to be taken. And I hope the Jamaican people understand.
I think there are a couple of points that we need to make. Is that we have a particular economic problem, a problem caused by a public debt which is just too high.
In 2013, the IMF approved a major program called the Extended Fund Facility, or EFF. This arrangement gave Jamaica access to SDR 615.38 million, equivalent to about 932 million US dollars at the time. The first disbursement, worth about $207 million, was released in May 2013. The loan came with strict conditions. Jamaica had to maintain high primary surpluses, meaning it had to collect more in revenue than it spent on everything except interest. It also had to reform its tax system, restructure state-owned enterprises, and restrain public sector wages. These measures were painful, but they were the price of IMF support. In 2016, after progress under the EFF, Jamaica transitioned to a new arrangement. This time, the IMF approved a precautionary standby arrangement worth about $1.6 billion. Unlike the earlier program, Jamaica did not draw the full amount. Instead, the arrangement acted as an insurance policy. If Jamaica faced external shocks, it could access the funds. So, while the approved amounts under IMF programs were large, the actual outstanding debt fluctuated. What matters is how much Jamaica truly owed at different points in time.
Now, when you look at what we've been able to achieve during this period of stabilization, though it involved trade-offs, though it involved compression, we had 20 consecutive periods of quarterly growth between the end of 2015 and 2019, the longest period of unbroken quarterly growth since we started measuring it in 1997. Prior to that experience, we only had quarterly growth stretches to a maximum of 9 quarters. 3 quarters of growth, then decline. 4 quarters, then decline. The maximum was 9. And with the stabilization effort, though it involves a trade-off, though it involves compression, what comes with it is less volatility, longer periods of growth. It elongates the economic cycle and gives us a greater chance for economic development.
From nearly $1 billion borrowed in 2013 to less than $30 million left in 2025, Jamaica has effectively completed its repayment journey. IMF loans are not like regular bank loans. Countries do not simply borrow and then wait 10 or 20 years to repay. Instead, the IMF requires what it calls repurchases. These are scheduled principal repayments, usually within 3 or 5 years of the loan disbursement. On top of that, the IMF charges service fees and interest, known as charges. For Jamaica, this meant that every year since 2013, large payments had to be made to the IMF. These included hundreds of millions of dollars in the early years, then smaller amounts in recent years as the balance declined. The only way Jamaica managed to keep up was through strict fiscal discipline. Successive governments maintained high primary surpluses, meaning the government consistently spent less than it earned, excluding interest costs. Ordinary Jamaicans bore the weight of wage freezes, tax increases, and limited public spending. But the discipline paid off. It created a record of credibility with international investors, helped stabilize the Jamaican dollar, and restored confidence in the economy. For decades, Jamaica has been under IMF supervision. Every loan program came with quarterly reviews, conditions, and public reports. Meeting IMF targets was essential for keeping funds flowing and for securing confidence from other lenders. In many ways, IMF approval acted as a seal of good behavior. Now, as the IMF balance approaches zero, Jamaica will no longer be under this level of scrutiny. The country will have more independence to design its own fiscal and economic policies. It also means that Jamaica's success story is recognized globally.
Pensions and social security. Moreover, we have used your taxes to bring down debt servicing, which creates more room to spend on the things that matter.